Welcome, everybody, to the Digital Nomad Experts Podcast by Beach Commute. Today, I've got a special guest. Elliot Rosenberg is joining me from Goa, India. Elliot, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
So, how long have you been in India?
I have been here about 9 years.
9 years now. Okay.
Yeah.
And were you traveling around looking for the next place to set your roots down, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so I've lived abroad for about 13 years of my adult life, and I started a business in Brazil, a travel business in Brazil. Think like Airbnb, but for favela community, where we had an online marketplace for foreign travelers to experience living in the home of favela families and at the same time generate sustainable income for families there. And we were doing this all 10 plus years ago in advance of the FIFA World Cup. And it was a very formative experience for me, learned a ton, but in many ways I got burnt out quickly. I was living in the biggest favela in Brazil, running this business, and I just got really jealous of my customers. A lot of them were traveling around Brazil, Latin America, the world, and I was in one place. It was a fucking beautiful place. I don't know if you've been to Rio before,
I have not.
but probably the
Tell me.
most seductive big city on the planet. But I just wanted to have that feeling of waking up every day and experiencing something new. So got introduced to this crazy world of points and miles all around, or just around that time when I was feeling most burnt out and wanting to kind of escape. And I dove in really deep, read every blog, talked to everyone I could talk to, and started accruing lots of points and miles, and decided that I'd just go and experience the newest possible thing, which was the opposite of what I was doing, and that was to go to Asia. And I backpacked to 17 countries over 15 months, and the last stop was more or less India. And India was a
Okay.
place that I had a lot of interest in from a business perspective, and culturally, historically, spiritually fascinating civilization. So I landed in India and traveled around a bit, but had the expectation that I'd work here, and ended up working for an Indian company, an Indian fintech startup for about 5 years. And that's kind of how I started out in India.
Thank you for that background. That is a perfect
Yeah.
launching point today for the audience. We're going to be talking about points, travel hacking, something that Marissa and I have been longing to talk about for a very long time, and we do not have the expertise. So
Okay.
we've been looking, and by expertise, I mean fucking zero. I have no idea
Okay.
how any of this works.
All right.
Just signed up for like a mileage program with, I don't even remember. I don't even remember which one I signed up for. So I need this probably as badly as the audience
Cool.
does. So I'm really excited. I'm going to come in totally fresh with lots of questions
Awesome.
like a potential customer.
Great.
Hopefully the audience gets a lot of this out of this too, because this is
Yeah.
also, I mentioned this is, something we've been wanting to talk about for a long time, and not just for me, but because we've had lots of requests to the podcast to talk about this. We're like throwing up our hands. We don't know what we don't know. So yeah, really excited to get into this. I don't know maybe where the best place is for you to start. So I'll kick it to you, and maybe talk to me like a preschooler, get the
Sure.
crayons out and chalkboard,
ELI
and
5.
let's go.
Yeah. So broadly, we'll talk about travel hacking, but there are many different ways to do travel hacking. And the one that I feel is most applicable to most people, especially those who have access to the US financial system, whether you're a citizen of the US or not, you have, say, a social security number or an ITIN or an EIN for a US based business. This is going to be most relevant for those kinds of people, but people who also have access to the Canadian system, the British system, Australian, German, which is probably going to be a lot of your audience. A lot of this will apply as well. So the specific area of travel hacking that I focus on is points and miles for particularly flights and stays. And the main way that we help people to accrue those points is through credit cards. And especially in the US and some of these other countries, credit cards that have very lucrative sign up or welcome bonus offers. For example, it might be like open this card, spend $3,000 in the first 3 months, and get a 100,000 point sign up bonus. Now,
Hmm.
what that 100,000 points actually can translate to can be vastly different depending on what type of points or miles those are. But, it's very reasonable that a floor value could be $1,000 in travel, but could easily be $10,000 if you know how to use those points in the right ways.
Okay, gotcha. So why don't we start with where you're most comfortable? Seems like points and credit cards
Yeah,
seems to be we why don't we jump into that, and I'll just give you a little bit of background on where I'm
sure,
at on that.
sure.
I From what I understand, and most of the people I travel with, they all have the Chase card.
Oh,
The
there are
darker
many.
the darker Chase card, yeah.
The Sapphire Reserve, Sapphire Preferred,
I think
one of
it's
those. Yeah.
I believe it's reserve.
There are
I
lots
think
of like dark blue chase cards, so there could be
Oh
many
yeah, okay.
that
Well,
get
I'm being
confusing.
zero. I'm being zero help here.
Okay.
Yeah, and most of the time, it's just kind of ubiquitous. People say that's
Yeah.
got the best, gets you the
Yeah.
best points, and it gets you. The main thing is everybody wants priority pass access in
Okay.
lounges and
Yeah.
airports, and
Uh-huh.
that's probably like 50% of it.
Okay.
But for the most of us, that's about as far as our knowledge goes. So,
Gotcha.
if you could maybe explain the differences in these credits, I know there are going to be vast differences in them, but
Sure.
what's the theme here? Like, what are we trying to do by getting these credit cards?
So different cards have different benefits. So I want to separate the points, which are usually to be redeemed for travel, especially flights and hotels, sometimes like activities, experiences, and the benefits. You talked about a benefit that's common on a lot of cards, which is lounge access. And Priority Pass is a global airport lounge network that, depending on like what tier of membership you have, you could potentially access for free in airports. You could potentially bring guests for free with you when you visit the lounge with them. You can give other people who are not even traveling with you access to Priority Pass, and they can travel without you and gain access. So I just want to separate the points which you earn from spending and the benefits that just straight away generally come with the card, though sometimes they can be conditional.
Got it. Okay, so let's jump into the points aspect.
Sure. So
That's
that's,
probably where
yeah.
I'm the most confused because, as you
Huh?
said, points are different per
Yeah.
card. And I've
Yeah.
heard of people transferring points from here to
Yeah.
there, and that's
Okay.
where my brain explodes.
Sure. Sure. So points are essentially a currency and they have differing values, just like a dollar versus a euro versus a yen. And they can be used in different ways. So generally, you use them for flights and hotels, some experiences, activities can also be possible options. But the points you accrue from spending, usually there's a fixed number of points that you earn per dollar spent. And the way to turbocharge your points balance is to sign up for new cards that have welcome bonus offers. And if we talk about earning the points, that's going to be thinking about which kinds of points you want, when you need them, how much you can spend without actually spending more than you would otherwise be spending. Because if that's the case, then throw your phone out the window right now or snap your laptop in half, because this can go down a very dark path of credit card debt and fees and make this not worthwhile at all. So spending not more than you otherwise would spend, you're going to earn points, and then opening new cards, you're going to earn welcome bonuses, which can be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of points, usually for spending a particular amount in the first 3, 4, 6 months of opening that card. And with those points, or there are different kinds of points, there are, let's say, broadly three kinds of points. One is airline miles, which you don't need a credit card for. and you can just earn from flying on any flight where there's an airline loyalty program that's usually going to award you miles per dollar that you spend or per literal mile that your plane has flown. And there are cards that specifically earn American Airlines, Delta, United, British Airways, Avios, Virgin, etc., etc. Pretty much any major airline has one or multiple cards in sometimes one or multiple countries' financial systems that earn those miles. So those can be used for at the best value for flights on that particular airline, as well as oftentimes the partner airlines of that airline. So there are three major airline alliances in the world: One World, Star Alliance, and SkyTeam. And each of them has like one or two dozen airlines that are a part of that alliance, and they can reciprocally earn and redeem their miles on each other's flights. So those are airline miles. That's category one. Category two is hotel points. And that would be, there are far fewer types of those because there are fewer big hotel brands, but you've got Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, IHG, Wyndham. Those are like the big global brands that have cards that earn points. And usually those are really only going to be a good value for staying in the various hotel brands of that group. And sometimes you might not even be aware that there's a hotel that's part of a loyalty program. So you can quickly Google a particular brand and see, is Autograph Hotels part of a hotel group? Oh, it's actually part of Marriott, even though it doesn't have the word Marriott in its brand name. So hotel points usually for just stays at those hotels. And then the really tricky part where your head exploded from previous conversations is credit card points, or we can say flexible transferable points currencies. And this is where you have many more options. So the big ones in the US are Amex, Chase, Capital One, Citi, and like Amex, for example, issues cards in the UK, Canada, Australia, Germany, many other countries. And those are flexible in the sense of you can redeem them in many more ways. You're not so narrowly locked in. And when someone says they've transferred their points, that means that they have one of those currencies that can transfer at a particular ratio to one of the airline or hotel programs for the most part.
Okay.
So, like you can say you transferred your Chase points to Hyatt and you're able to get a much better value from your Chase points by transferring them to Hyatt as opposed to just going through Chase's own like Expedia or Google Flights like portal that it has on its website, where there's going to be a fixed redemption value. Like if you hold that card that probably a lot of your friends and digital nomads have, the Chase Sapphire Preferred card, you can just take your Chase points and basically go in that portal just like you'd be searching on Google Flights or Kayak and redeem your points for almost any flight or hotel at 1.25 cents each. But if you understand how the game works, then you know that you could instead transfer those Chase points to one of their transfer partners, which could be British Airways or Southwest or Hyatt, and get far higher value. And especially if you're looking to do more luxury travel, things like fancy resorts, lie flat business class, international flights, then the value that you can get instead of being 1.25 cents, 1 cent per point can easily be 2, 3, 5, 10 cents per point.
How do you figure that out? Where each one of these good value transfers exists? Just knowing it over the years, or are you constantly looking up certain websites that'll tell you, or
Yeah.
updates from the partners?
So, yes and no. It does help to understand all of the tricky nuances of how all this works. But someone who's just starting out and wants to do it on their own and doesn't want to work with like an advisor like me or an award booking service would be able to cover a lot of ground by searching on a few free tools. They have paid subscriptions, but the free tools can get you pretty far. One is pointsyeah.com, like YEAH. And that is going to be, that's like a Google Flights or a kayak for points. And it's going to tell you all of the different points options, and some of the like points search engines, whether they're for hotels or flights, will not just tell you what all the different options are, but they'll even give you some guides as to how you can then go and book that, because it might not always be so straightforward as to how you can convert your points into travel.
Okay, got it. So I think most of the things that I see and everybody I talk to sees that is interested in this are watching people on Instagram
Oh,
say, I transferred X points, and you've got all
yeah.
these pictures of them lying flat,
Yeah.
watching Harry Potter 6 and drinking mimosa and eating
Right.
lobster thermidor.
Yeah, it's the
Everybody wants to
best.
know. It's the you mentioned luxury travel.
Yeah.
That's there's a reason why my nickname is La Princesa when I travel. I love
Okay.
that shit.
Uh-huh. But
Yeah,
are you
so
paying out of pocket for it?
yeah, always. I guess I don't know what
Okay.
the hell I'm doing.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, well you don't really have to pay that much if you do this in the right way. You know, like it's pretty common that you can get a 9+% discount on the cost of business class. So you can travel in business class lie flat for far less than the cost of economy if you do this the right way.
Okay. And the best way to, obviously the best way to start is probably working with an expert like you.
Yeah.
Short of
Or
that.
learn it on your own.
Uh,
Like the tool that I just mentioned is a great one for searching flights and hotels. It's not the be all end all, and it can still be intimidating if you're doing it for the first time. There are still risks, things
mhm.
like you could transfer your points and not realize that the flight that you wanted was actually never available using points to begin with, but
Oh
it's
God.
more like a technical glitch. That's something called phantom award availability, and that could really screw you and
God,
mean
that
that
sounds
your points
a nightmare.
are now trapped in a airline or hotel program where you have no use for them, and then they're going to expire in 12 months. So that's a risk, but you can definitely cover a lot of ground using these free tools.
Tell the audience a few examples of awesome things that you've gotten through
Sure.
using this process.
Yeah.
Uh, First class flights,
Yeah.
nice hotel stays. Like what kind of things
Absolutely.
could they be experiencing?
Yeah, so I can talk about myself and I can also talk about clients, but
Yeah.
my big victories were I flew in Etihad's first class apartment from JFK, New York to Abu Dhabi. That's a 13-hour flight. The cash rate was $17,000. It's a flight where you get, first of all, like a black car chauffeur pick you up, drop you off. You have fancy lounge access beyond what you'd get from like a priority pass. You have a chef on the plane who's custom tailoring meals to you. You can eat whatever you want at any time. You don't have to wait for meal service. Order unlimited drinks. There's a bar in the middle of the plane where you can socialize with other passengers. There's even a shower
Oh
at
my God.
35,000 feet. You can be above the ocean showering. And that was $17,000 in cash at the time, but I paid $7 in taxes for it. And I paid 81,000 American Airlines miles at the time, which was more or less like one credit card sign up bonus in terms of value. It's more expensive now, just like with the dollar or any currency for the most part.
Yeah.
There's inflation. Points have an even faster rate of inflation than dollars. So that's
That's
one. Yeah.
sounds
I can keep
incredible.
going.
Yeah, no, no, no. Keep going. This is the juicy stuff. That's what we want to get
Yeah.
to.
So for my honeymoon, my wife and I went to the Maldives and stayed in an overwater villa, which is sort of like the classic social media Instagram
Oh yeah.
thing. And it lives up to the hype. It's really fucking awesome to be like surrounded by the ocean, suspended above the ocean, and have like a ladder down from your villa just into the sandy water or like the sandy bottom crystal clear water and see like manta rays and all kinds of pretty fish floating around. That's another example, but I've done those kinds of like $1,000+ a night 5-star resort stays, lie flat business class seats, and the destinations as well have been unlocked because of the fact that I haven't had to really pay much at all for the flights or
Mm.
hotels. So I've had some like cool experiences that I've paid out of pocket for that I otherwise could never afford.
Yeah. How many credit cards would you say you have open at this current moment?
I don't keep track, but
Okay.
or I do. No, so that's wrong. I do keep track, but I
uh,
don't have that. I don't ingrain that number in my memory. I would guess 20 or 25 currently, but I've opened
uh,
probably about 80 credit cards in the past decade, and
yeah.
I've
Okay.
earned millions of miles and probably gotten a few $100,000 worth of free and especially luxury travel.
So a lot of the listeners to this podcast are
Yeah,
kind of up and coming, new
sure.
to travel, to
Yeah.
debt, certainly new to digital nomads, no digital nomading. Um, do you have any recommendations for them for just getting their feet wet? Say they've got just a typical American credit card, unrelated to travel. What do you think would be like a good getting your feet wet type of
Yeah,
starting point?
let's assume that you do have some credit history and you're financially responsible. You pay your card off in full and on time every month. That's like table stakes here.
Yep.
But if you're just looking to get one card and hold that card for a long time, then and especially be able to use it on travels abroad and as a digital nomad, I would recommend the Capital One Venture card, which is there are different Capital One cards that have the word venture in them. So specifically, it's the Capital One Venture Rewards card. And
Okay.
first of all, it's got a great bonus normally that's going to be worth like $800+ in at a bare minimum level for any kind of travel. Easily a few $1,000s if you're trying to redeem it for luxury travel.
Mm.
But the nice thing about that card is it does have a $95 annual fee, but every year you get 10,000 points just for paying the annual fee. The 10,000 points is worth minimum $100 toward travel. So it's like they're paying you $5 net per year just to keep the card. And then the
Uh-huh.
really good things are that it earns 2 miles per dollar spent on all purchases.
Okay.
And on top of that, it has no foreign transaction fees, which is really critical if you're living abroad and continuing to hold the US bank account. And it has lounge access, some lounge access, and also the points are transferable. So if you just want to like cash them out for a penny a piece because you don't want to think about all this stuff, then you've got that set at a bare minimum. But if you're looking to do something, if you're willing to take a little time to learn and try to get something, especially uh, luxury out of those points, then they transfer to some great transfer partners, hotels and airlines, and you can get great value there. So that was one that'd be like my top digital nomad sign up and keep card.
Got it. Okay. Let's spend maybe make a left turn here and talk a little bit about airline programs,
Sure.
mileage programs. You talked a little bit about how you can transfer points here and there, but maybe let's spend a little bit more time just talking about the concept
Uh-huh.
and what it means, why you should do it, and maybe some of the ones you would recommend signing up for.
Specifically the airline, the frequent flyer mileage programs.
Well, let's start at the very beginning because I know you've got like individual airlines. I've signed up for a
Mm-hmm.
couple of individual airlines, and then I
Right.
know there's alliances that you can sign up for.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's just start at ground zero there and
Sure.
unpack what some of that means.
So airlines want to incentivize people to be loyal to them. And the way that they do that is through these loyalty programs that are usually free to sign up for. And you will accrue benefits in them by, especially with airlines, making sure that your frequent flyer number is attached to whatever tickets you book. So if you're booking directly through the airline, then that's going to be automatic as long as you're signed in. If you're booking through a third party travel agency, then maybe when you go to check in or you do so online, you should attach your frequent flyer number, and you're going to earn some miles. You're going to get something back every time you fly for the most part. It's when you're starting out, it's generally not that lucrative. Like it's something you should absolutely do because it's like it's free, doesn't really take any time, but I would say you're probably going to earn 2 to 5% back in terms of miles toward future flights. But where it gets really interesting is if you are frequently flying with the same airlines or you're flying with airlines who are partners of that one airline. So they're in an alliance or they just have one-off partnerships with each other. And in that case, if you are spending a lot of money, flying a lot of literal miles in those airplanes, then the rate at which you earn and the benefits that you get in terms of levels of status that you attain in those programs can give you things like free upgrades, free checked bags, waived fees. And that's why you hear like a lot of people are like fiercely like I only fly Delta or I only fly British Airways. And that's generally because of the perks that they get from frequently flying. If you're an occasional traveler, it's not gonna accumulate. It's not gonna accrue to much. But if you do frequently travel, then yeah, it can be substantial. So I'd say something everyone should do and be mindful of. But unless you're really traveling a lot with the same airline or airlines all in the same alliance or are partners with each other, then you're not going to get a ton of value from that.
Okay. Understood. So looking at a typical digital nomad, I think the average ranges around 30,000 miles a year for
Uh-huh.
typical to
That's a lot.
maybe 50, stamp
Yeah.
collectors can get up to 50 to 100,000.
We're sorry,
So
we're talking about literal miles flown or airline
yeah,
miles?
miles
Yeah.
flown per
Yeah,
year.
I guess
Yeah.
that's actually not that much because like what
Hmm.
US Asia would probably end up being 15 to 20,000 miles round trip. So that's
Okay.
not that much. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. What was I going to ask you? Yeah, that part's kind of confusing too because you look at the different alliances and trying to figure out, do I need to stay loyal to one? Where do I where do I go with this?
So I think that loyalty is generally useless unless you travel a lot. So maybe flying like more than once a month and longer haul flights. Otherwise, it doesn't end up making a big difference. You'll make a far bigger dent just by signing up for a new credit card and earning the bonus. You could theoretically, earn way more miles from signing up for a single card and buying a coffee and paying $100 annual fee than you would flying like once a month for 5 years.
That's really good advice. I have talked to people about it before, and they get all excited about status with their partner, whatever they're
Yeah,
using, and they talk about upgrades, which I'm not even sure exactly how that works. They say they'll
yeah.
possibly get an upgrade at the gate, things like that. I've heard stories about that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that how again, you got to be a frequent. You really have to be a frequent traveler for that. For you to reach that stage, especially with airlines, with hotel programs, you can effectively buy status for very cheap, and depending on which types of hotels you're staying in, which part of the world you're in, it can be really lucrative, really beneficial, and you literally never have to stay in a Hilton hotel and you can get top tier status in their program just by signing up for one credit card that has a $550 annual fee. And frankly, that $550 annual fee gets reduced by some of the credits that the card gives you just for flying, for example. So the hotel program status is far easier to obtain in a few instances. You can really just straight up buy it for cheap. Whereas the airline status takes a lot of butt in seat miles and dollars to really do anything for you.
These are more probably business people that are
Yeah,
traveling very
yeah,
frequently to
yeah,
Asia, like
absolutely.
daily in the United States kind of thing for it to actually add up.
Yeah,
So if there are some digital nomads that are planning travel a
yeah.
ton, is there a particular, I don't know if you call them alliance or group that maybe has a better deal than others? Like Star
Yeah.
Alliance versus fill in the blank.
So I'd say Star Alliance. If I had to pick one, it'd be Star Alliance because it has, I think, the most partner airlines,
Hmm.
and there's something called fuel surcharges, which is like an unnecessary kind of shitty fee that when you're redeeming miles in certain programs, airlines will charge you over and above the miles that you're using. So that's why the flights are generally not 100% free. There's like a small copay that you have to pay, but that copay can be ridiculously large if you're using one airline's miles for another airline's flights. So Star Alliance is maybe one where that's less likely to happen. So United Airlines is one that's it. It's like the anchor member of the Star Alliance. There's Lufthansa. There's ANA. These are a few of the Star Alliance members. So if I had to pick one, it'd be that. But if you're trying to accrue in one that has the most options for redeeming your miles, I would say it's actually Air Canada. Air Canada's Aeroplan, they have the most partners through their Star Alliance membership and just one-off partnerships of any airline in the world. And if you are based in the US, then it's very easy to accrue Air Canada Aeroplan points without ever flying Air Canada or any airline for that matter. And then you can redeem them on, like, I think they have 55 plus airline partners, which is very unique. And they have otherwise a very friendly program.
That's really helpful. I think I was focusing my brain in the wrong area. And it seems like for us, at least for digital nomads, it probably makes more sense to put a little bit more energy into credit cards. Now, the credit cards, I think, speaking for myself and just a few other people I've talked to,
Mm-hmm.
people get a little bit nervous when they start talking about
Sure.
credit cards for a couple
Yeah.
different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
One, accumulating debt. Another
Yeah.
one is soft credit hits. I don't
Yeah.
know if either one of these things are true. I don't know if the soft credit thing hit is true. And I also don't know, you mentioned opening up a credit card to get the initiation bonus.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe you can talk about, do I have to use the credit card? Do I
Yeah.
have to keep a balance on there? That kind of thing.
Yeah. One, you should not get into this game if you're not financially responsible. And financially responsible means never spending more than you would otherwise be spending. And that, no one else can really tell you that besides yourself. You have to be honest. Just because you have a shiny piece of plastic doesn't mean you can go wild and buy the entire fucking store. So that's point one. Point two is you need to make sure you're never paying interest on credit cards. And you pay interest when you do not pay your balance in full after every month. You don't need to pay it immediately. You usually have like a 30 to 50-day period when between when you make the purchase and you have to pay off your statement, but pay it off in full on time every month, full stop. So we get that out of the way. In terms of the actual impact on your credit, there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about how credit cards work. But at a high level, whenever you apply for a new credit card, you will likely see your credit score dip 5 to 15 points, which is very marginal. It's not really something to worry about. That's just because of you mentioned credit pull or credit inquiry. It's a hard credit inquiry that you have given consent for the bank to check your credit reports for. And just by you doing that, that shows that you're seeking credit. And that's a small negative signal on your credit report. That will neutralize after 3 to 6 months. And after 24 months, it'll entirely fall off your report. No one will ever be able to see it again. But as long as you're paying off that new card that you've opened on time in full every month, you're actually going to see it improve your credit score. And that's because the two biggest components, or together, about 2/3 of the overall credit score calculation is one, your payment history. Do you pay on time every month? And two, your credit utilization, which is the percentage of your overall credit limit across all of your credit cards that you have used every month. So if you have a $10,000 credit limit, credit line across all of your credit cards, and when the statement closes altogether, you've got a balance of $1,000, that means 1,000 divided by 10,000 is equal to 10%. So
Mhm.
generally, if your utilization is less than about 30%, then you're fine. Those two things together are the vast majority of your overall credit score. The most minor aspect is that number of hard credit inquiries in the last 24 months, and especially like the last 3 to 6 months. So yeah, you want to use those credit inquiries intentionally for good cards that you're likely to get approved for, so you're not wasting those inquiries, but they're really not something to worry much about. You should focus on more like, say, after 6 months, your credit score is going to rise because you're paying on time. That's increasing your credit history and credit payment on time rate. And you've also now hopefully got a lower utilization, meaning the percentage of your overall credit that you're using is less on a monthly basis.
Okay.
So that's kind of in a nutshell how this game of applying for credit cards works. The other thing is closing cards. And some people worry about, I'm opening the card for the bonus and then I've got the bonus and I don't want to keep paying the annual fee anymore because it's not really rewarding to keep that card. So generally what we recommend people do is, first of all, assuming that they even want to keep the card, maybe there's some benefits like lounge access or some contribution to getting you higher status with an airline, then in that case, you want to contact your bank and ask them to either waive the fee, reduce the fee, or give you some kind of retention bonus. So that's option one, because then your credit history is going to be maintained for that particular account. Option two is, with cards that do have annual fees, oftentimes you can downgrade them to cards that have no annual fee. And the beauty of that is that you're not going to pay the annual fee, but you get to keep that credit history on your report. And just put a small charge, buy a coffee every 6 months on that card to keep it active, to prevent the bank from forcibly closing it. The last option is closing the card. I want to say a last resort, but frankly, it's not even that big of a deal. I close cards all the time, and the impact of closing a card will be less and less as you have a longer, more robust credit history. In some cases, it actually makes sense to close a card to kind of free up a slot that you might have with, say, American Express that limits you to having 5 credit cards at a time, and you want to get another credit card. So in that order, from waive or reduce the fee to downgrade the card to close the card. But overall, closing is really not that big of a deal, especially if you have a few years of credit history.
Okay. So, last question. The sign up bonus seems like a too good to be true type of situation.
Mm-hmm.
Is it too good to be true? What is required of you if you sign up in terms of, do I have to buy something? Do I have to earn that bonus by doing something? I don't know.
I would say it's not too good to be true. I've definitely earned millions of points and miles worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars of free or nearly free luxury travel, primarily through sign up bonuses. And sometimes I've gotten the same sign up bonus on the same card multiple times. And the catch is usually, and it's very explicit, it's not hidden, it's that you need to spend a particular amount, usually in the first 3, 4, 6 months after opening that card, in order to earn the bonus. There are a couple great cards out there that don't get enough love for people who don't have a lot of money to spend, that will literally pay out a big bonus just from you paying the annual fee of about $100 and literally making any purchase. It could be a coffee. It could
Okay.
be a $5 Amazon gift card. It doesn't matter. And in that sense, the only catch is pay the annual fee and make one purchase. Usually cards generally either have an annual fee. Sometimes there are great bonuses for cards that don't have an annual fee. And oftentimes also there are cards that have an annual fee, but they waive it in the first year. So in that sense, it's really just a matter of spending. You don't even have to pay any additional amount, just shift your regular spending onto this card.
So, in wrapping this up,
Yeah.
want to thank you. This has been an
Yeah.
awesome conversation, pointed me in the right direction. I knew
Sure.
nothing. I know something now. Tell me a
Great.
little bit about Hack My Honeymoon.
Yeah. So we at Hack My Honeymoon, first of all, I'm the founder of Hack My Honeymoon. We help engaged couples to leverage the already budgeted wedding expenses that they're going to have to earn points that they can use for a nearly free and particularly luxury honeymoon, especially flights and hotels. And we're kind of like a white glove boutique agency service where we walk you through from destination planning to points earning strategy, then ultimately building an itinerary for you, doing all the research on the availability for using your points, because you can't just say, I want to fly here, stay here on these dates, and expect that you can use your points for that. And then we'll book everything for you. So that's the end-to-end process. You don't really need to think about anything. You just need to apply for the cards we tell you to apply for and shift your spending onto those cards. And then we'll pretty much handle everything else for you. You enjoy a lovely luxury honeymoon, taking lie flat business class flights or staying in $1,000 a night fancy resorts all around the world for, including the fees that we charge, about 85%, 90% less than you would otherwise spend on that experience. But, you know, the honeymoon's in the name, but if you're a digital nomad, if you're not in a relationship, if you're a family, then we can still work with you. The beauty is just that you have a lot of wedding expenses that you could put on a card, and that can really ramp up the number of points that you can earn very quickly. But people, regardless of weddings, have their groceries, their dining, their utilities, their streaming subscriptions, gas, whatever it may be. And that's enough to earn you hundreds of thousands of points over time that you can use for a really cool trip. Doesn't need to be a honeymoon, can be a family trip, can be a solo getaway, whatever you want. So we help those kinds of people too.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Elliot. Everybody check out Elliot at hackmyhoneymoon.com. Really appreciate this. Thanks so much for writing in. And then thanks so much for giving us all the information on all the stuff that we've been looking to talk about for years.
Yeah, appreciate it. I would just add, we're also on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok at Rosenberg, like my last name. That's Rosenberg. So putting out tips and tricks and hacks, daily short form videos on the social platforms.
And we'll share this in the show notes too. You'll be able to find it in the notes in this actual episode in Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Very cool. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks again. We'll see everybody again next week.